Winter, 1940. A Polish officer stands in a snow-covered forest, hands tied behind his back. He doesn't know it yet, but he has only minutes left to live. And the truth about what's about to happen to him will stay buried for the next 47 years, because the people who knew the truth found it easier to lie. September 1939. Germany invades Poland from the west. Just over 2 weeks later, the Soviet Union invades from the east, under a secret agreement the two dictatorships had made just weeks earlier. Poland is crushed between them, split in half before it even has a chance to fully fight back. In the eastern half, now under Soviet control, the Red Army starts rounding up Polish military personnel, among them thousands of officers. Soviet forces begin identifying and separating Polish military officers from the general population. These aren't just soldiers. Many are doctors, teachers, lawyers, and engineers who put on a uniform when the war started. They represent some of the most educated, capable people in the entire country. One by one, they're taken into custody. Most have no idea this is the beginning of the end for them.
They were split up into different camps, one of them called Kozelsk. Weeks turned into months. The officers settled into a strange, uneasy routine, still holding on to hope that this would end soon. For a while, letters came through, short notes to wives, children, parents back home. Then, sometime in early 1940, the letters simply stopped. No explanation, no warning. Families waited by their mailboxes for news that never came. In the spring of 1940, something changed. Officers were called out of the camps in small groups. Soviet officials told them they were being released, that they were finally being sent home. For the first time in months, there was real hope. They were put on trains, told they were heading towards freedom. Some wrote final, happy letters before boarding. "I'll be home soon." Those words would be the last anyone ever heard from them. And then, nothing. No confirmation they'd arrived anywhere, no more letters, no records of where they went. For their families, it was as if these men had simply vanished from the earth.
3 years pass. By 1943, the war has shifted. German forces now occupied this part of Soviet territory, a stretch of forest near a place called Katyn. Local villagers have been telling quiet rumors for years about something buried in the woods. German officers finally decide to investigate. Soldiers begin probing the forest floor. In one area, the ground feels different, looser, sunken in places, as if something beneath it had settled over time. Nobody wants to say out loud what they're already starting to suspect. Digging begins. Shovels break into the frozen earth, one layer at a time. It doesn't take long before they hit something that isn't soil or rock. The soldiers go quiet. Word is sent back immediately for officers to come see for themselves. What they found was horrifying. Hundreds of bodies, buried together in large pits. Every single one had their hands tied behind their back. Every single one had been shot in the head, the same way. This wasn't a battlefield death. This was a planned execution. Germany announced it to the world immediately. The Soviets did this. And this time, Nazi propaganda, which lied constantly, was actually telling the truth. But the political situation at that moment made this truth incredibly inconvenient for everyone else.
Under pressure, an international commission is formed, including representatives from the Red Cross, to examine the bodies and determine how long they'd been buried. Their findings point to one clear conclusion. The killings happened in 1940, long before German forces ever occupied this territory. In 1940, this land belonged to the Soviets. For the Polish government in exile, based in London, this is devastating news. Thousands of their own officers, missing for 3 years, are now confirmed dead, killed by the very ally they were counting on to help liberate their country. They demand an independent investigation into what really happened. Weeks after demanding that independent investigation, Poland's own leader, General Władysław Sikorski, dies when his plane crashes just after takeoff from Gibraltar. Officially, it's ruled an accident, but the timing is enough to make people wonder for decades afterward, and to this day, some historians still question whether it really was just bad luck. Stalin doesn't respond with an apology or an explanation. Instead, he responds with fury, accusing the Polish government of colluding with the Nazis simply for asking questions. Within days, the Soviet Union cuts off diplomatic relations with Poland entirely. The ally that was supposed to help liberate Poland has now turned its back on it completely.
For Britain and America, this puts them in an impossible position. Their own intelligence agencies have reports confirming the Soviets committed this massacre. But Stalin is now their essential partner in the war against Hitler, and openly siding with Poland could shatter that partnership at the worst possible moment. So Britain and America make their choice. Publicly, they stay silent on who was really responsible. Behind closed doors, censors even quietly suppress reports and film footage that point toward Soviet guilt. Officially, doubt is allowed to remain, even though privately, doubt barely exists at all. After the war ends, the Soviets try something remarkable. At the Nuremberg trials, they formally attempt to charge Nazi Germany with the Katyn Massacre, the very crime they committed themselves. Western prosecutors, who know the truth, quietly declined to pursue it. The charge is dropped, unresolved, and left out of the tribunal's final judgment entirely. This lie goes on for decades. The Soviet Union keeps repeating it throughout the entire Cold War. For the families of these officers, there's no closure, just an official story they know, deep down, can't possibly be true.
In 1952, a U.S. congressional committee formally investigates the massacre. After reviewing the evidence, they conclude clearly the Soviet Union was responsible. But by now, the Cold War is in full swing. The findings make headlines briefly, and then quietly fade from public memory, overshadowed by the larger tensions of the era. Then, in 1990, as the Soviet Union itself begins to unravel, Mikhail Gorbachev's government finally does something no Soviet leader had ever done. They formally admit it. The secret police, not the Nazis, carried out the massacre. 50 years of denial end with a single official statement. 2 years later, in 1992, Russian President Boris Yeltsin goes even further. He releases the actual classified documents, the original order, signed decades earlier, authorizing the executions. For the first time, the world doesn't just have an admission, it has proof, in writing, of exactly who gave the order. The Katyn Massacre isn't just a story about a war crime. It shows how truth is often the first casualty of war. And sometimes, even the people who are supposed to be on your side won't tell you the truth when it's not in their own interest to do so. Today, Katyn stands as a reminder. History isn't only written on the battlefield. Sometimes, it's written in the decisions people make about what not to say.